Is my foray into this movement started in an animal ethics class.
Okay.
I'm actually studying, get my PhD in religion, so I'm a pastor at a church, and so I have, I would say, within my Christian beliefs, a compassion for creation, and I would say, kind of started between that class and my dog getting sick, and being able to recognize the immense compassion I have for my dog. Right. And then made me think, well, why don't I feel this way about other animals? Yeah. And it kind of just all, I would say, snowballed into something else. And what really took me over the top in terms of really getting me to go from just cutting out meat on a maybe limited basis to permanently cutting out meat was, again, the connection I was able to make between the oppression of animals and the oppression of black and brown people all over the world.
Absolutely.
And being able to find books and resources that were able to explain that. And really, I guess what started was just pictures that I saw in the sexual politics of meat that showed animals that were getting tested. And it reminded me of pictures I learned about people in the slave trade. And so I just thought, wow, this is crazy how this comparison is just right there. And so then I discovered a book called A Dreaded Comparison.
Yes.
And then that just, for me, after that, it was pretty much, I knew I had to make that change. Because when you can look and see that there's commonalities of oppression, and that one group of people in power basically uses the same mindset to oppress and suppress African Americans, and now using it on animals, I felt as though as African American, participating in the structure, I'm participating in the same thing that we fought so hard to overcome and are still fighting to overcome, that I needed to make and help other African Americans become aware of this as well. And so the love part comes in that just in my nature as a clergy, in my love for others, my love for particularly my mostly African American church, it's African American, Asian Pacific Islander, and looking at the health consequences of our culture and how we have a higher rate of diabetes, pretty much we have a higher rate of everything, in part because we have access to not as healthy food, we have low access to health care, and we have poor diets. Right. And so a lot of what I've been able to do within my own congregation is talk to them about why I became a vegetarian and the health benefits about being a vegetarian. Not so, the animal things have begun to grow, but it was much grounded in health and wellness and awareness of treatment of animals and how it relates to the treatment of African Americans.
And how was that message received?
Originally, I recognize I'm coming from a position of power. Even though I'm a young clergy person, I'm only 30 years old, and most people in my congregation are, 50 and up.
Right.
So in some ways, I think they had a lot of questions. But what I found is that what's really interesting is a lot of the older African American women in my church don't really eat meat anyways, but they don't say they're vegetarian. Because for them, a vegetarian has a connection with whiteness.
Right. Right.
And they're like, well, I'm not vegetarian because that's what white people do. Black people, And so once I was able to kind of help them move past words and look and realize that there's different ways we can eat that still taste good. And some of that is a fear that I think as a black person I even hadn't experienced is, well, how am I not going to eat soul food? How am I not going to eat fried chicken? How am I going to go home and tell my mom I'm not gonna eat fried chicken? She's gonna freak out, and that's an intense fear because the table is a huge part of our culture and most cultures, but particularly the African American Christian population. Sitting down for Sunday after church dinner is a big deal, and so helping them realize there's other things we can eat that are still soul food, that are vegetables, that are greens, collard greens, all different types of beans, and all different types of things that I grew up eating.
Absolutely.
If you make just minor changes, it can taste just as good, if not better, and it's healthy. And so it was a process. And when I first started there, the first time we had a potluck, I made a different form of greens. Typically, most black people cook greens. They use some kind of meat in the greens. I didn't use any meat. I used orange juice and I used raisins. So it's totally different taste. Cooked them in olive oil, some different things. And when people ate them, they were just like, wow, who made these greens? These are so good. And I was like, oh, these are vegan greens. And they just, they couldn't believe that this was something different. And so it was introducing to them that we can make these changes, that the food can still taste good, that you're not going to compromise your identity. There's nothing less black. It's not going to make you less black by not eating meat.